she has bodily autonomy. Sometimes that means feeling pressured or making a mistake or like even enthusiastically doing this. Maybe that is what she wanted. And she finally feels like, okay, I need to stop worrying about being my mom and just be the sexual being I want to be. It's not clear, but it doesn't matter in terms of who she is as a person. And that's phenomenal.
Have you ever had something you love dismissed because it's just pop culture? What others might deem stupid shit, you know matters. You know it's worth talking and thinking about. And so do we. So come overthink with us as we delve into our deep thoughts about stupid shit.
I'm Emily Guy Birkin, and you're listening to Deep Thoughts About Stupid Shit, because pop culture is still culture. And shouldn't you know what's in your head? On today's episode, I will be sharing my deep thoughts about the 1996 Wes Craven film Scream with my sister, Tracy Geidecker, and with you. Let's dive in. So, Trace, I know that you've seen this movie only because you mentioned it last week, and I don't think I realized that you'd seen it because of me.
Yeah, you told me it was worth my screwing my courage to the sticking place, and so I did. I mean, in 1996, I was in college, so I obviously didn't watch it with you. But yeah, I've seen it, but probably not since then. So what's in my head about it is I don't remember who the killer or killers were. I remember Ghostface, like the mask. And I remember sort of being charmed by, like, we sometimes will say, like, if people knew what genre of movie they were in, they would make different choices. And in Scream, they do know what genre of movie they're in and sort of talk about it. And I remember being really charmed by that. I remember really liking the main character, the protagonist, final girl, Sydney,
yes.
I guess. I remember really, really liking her. That's all I got, really. So tell me, why are we talking about it today? What's at stake?
So, well, we're talking about it because of Halloween. So that's why today.
Right.
What's at stake is this is the movie that made me love horror. We did an episode on Poltergeist, which is what made me terrified of horror as a small child. This film came out in December of 96. I was 17. And it was when I was a senior in high school. So I was the demographic for the film. And it was when I was seeing pretty much one, maybe two movies every weekend. Like, I went to the movies. I remember I went to see it with friends over winter break. I was talking to a friend of mine and saying, like, I really got to go see it again. And so I went to see it in the theater twice within like a week and a half. And from there, I ended up becoming kind of a horror aficionado, which I don't think I would have described myself that way, but that is what happened. Now, there are certain things I don't do in horror, like in the early 2000s with like Saw and things like that. Things went super gore heavy. And this is a very gory movie. I'm not going to lie. This is very gory. But when things went super gore heavy and was like pornographically gory, I don't do that. But these kinds of films where there's a bit of a mystery to it, there are true scares to it, and there is humor to it. And all of those I think of as classic horror, Wes Craven style horror, became one of my favorite genres.
This is one of his movies, right?
This was Wes Craven's like return to the genre. And it's a phenomenal movie. So it's an important film to me. Rewatching it, I realized I have not seen it in nearly 25 years. And it was for a little while one of my favorite movies. And there's a very specific reason why I haven't rewatched it. And it is something that made it very difficult to rewatch. When I was a senior in college, sometime around 2000, 2001, a young woman from my school, which is very small, disappeared. She was missing for several months. It was known that she was depressed, and it was thought that she had gone somewhere to take her own life. On the day that we discovered that she had, in fact, been murdered, I had not been feeling well and had decided to take a break from studying and was going to watch a movie. I ended up watching, I think, X-Files or something instead, but I had Scream on VHS. This is how long ago it was, and had almost watched Scream. And I was horrified that the day that I found out a peer had been murdered, I was considering watching a film where murder is entertainment.
And just to be super, super clear, you thought about watching Scream before
I knew
your peer had been
yes.
murdered.
So
it was after the fact that you were sort of horrified by murder as entertainment. Yeah.
I'm not feeling well in my dorm, put on a movie. I'd been thinking about it, but I was like, nah, I feel like, drooling over David Duchovny instead. And then we get the notification, which I think was via email, where like they sent something out and, like here's counseling and all of that. And I was crying and feeling sick to my stomach. I haven't touched the movie since. And watching it now that I am no longer the demographic
of the people in
peril, I am the parents of the people in peril. It's a very, very different experience. Although it is just as phenomenal a movie, it is a very odd experience watching this. I have to say, I am so grateful to this movie still, even as I feel many kinds of ways about murder as entertainment. And the movie even talks about that in some ways. But I'm so grateful for giving me Sidney Prescott as a role model. I didn't get Nancy Thompson because I was so afraid of Freddy Krueger, but I got Sidney Prescott at a point when I think it was important for me to have her. And I really am hopeful that is true of lots of other young women like me. That's what's at stake here. Let me give you a couple postcards from the destination, like we say. So this is actually a very feminist movie in a lot of ways. So I'm going to want to talk about that. It's very funny and like witty. And I don't mean that in like the bon mot. I mean like witty in the way that it is constructed. Smart. And so like it names horror tropes and deconstructs itself. And it's just tight. It's really, really well done. And what's impressive about it is how it's well done in multiple levels. There is something very prescient in it about angry young men and kind of incel culture. There is also something in it that I think is prescient about Harvey Weinstein and Rose McGowan, who is a major character, plays a major character in this. Harvey and Bob Weinstein were producers of this film. Bob was the lead producer, but Harvey Weinstein was involved. So all those are things that I think I'm going to want to talk about. And then this movie also is part of the reason why I am a big believer that comedy and horror are two sides of the same coin. So those are all things I'm going to want to talk about. Since it has been 30 years since you saw the movie, I'm going to give you a reminder of what happens. I'm not going to go blow by blow. We get the setup of who the killer is and what's going on with an introduction with the murder of Casey Becker, played by Drew Barrymore. Now, one of the things that was very fascinating about this, and actually I think Barrymore was part of the decision in doing this, she was originally tapped to play Sidney Prescott, like the main character. And she was like, wouldn't it be more interesting if I'm killed off in the first 10 minutes? So kind of like Marion Crane in Psycho. Sorry, I kept thinking Norman Bates, Bates Hotel. I couldn't come up with the name of the movie. And they leaned into that where because she was a known actress and they leaned into it with all the advertising, we thought she was going to be in the film. And so the fact that she dies in the first 10 minutes is shocking and very, very smart filmmaking. So we see how the killer operates. He uses a voice changer modulator. Although I just found out today, that's actually a guy. That's an actual guy has that voice, which is like, damn. Holy crap. So starts kind of flirtatious and acting like he's calling with the wrong number, then starts being sadistic and scaring her, ends up killing her boyfriend who he has like tied up, and kills her just before her parents get home. We then meet Sidney Prescott, played by Neve Campbell. Sidney Prescott's mother was reportedly raped and murdered about a year before. Her mother, Maureen. Her father is Neil. Cotton Weary was put away for that crime, is the name of the man who was put away for that crime. He claims that it was a consensual sexual relationship, and Sidney was the primary witness. She saw Cotton Weary leaving with a blood-stained jacket, which we later learn she saw someone leaving with the jacket. Weary claims that he left it behind and that someone else was wearing it. And there are rumors all around town, this is a small town of Woodsboro, California, that Maureen had affairs left, right, and center. When we meet Sidney, her dad is telling her, it's late at night, her dad is saying like, hey, I'm going to be out of town until Sunday. There's cash on the kitchen table. My flight leaves in the morning. I'll be at the Hilton by the airport, blah, 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 blah. And just then her boyfriend, Billy Loomis, played by Skeet Ulrich, climbs in the window. I don't think it's a coincidence that he looks a little bit like Johnny Depp. He's got a very similar kind of look to Johnny Depp, who would climb into Nancy Thompson's window in Friday the 13th. Nightmare on Elm Street.
Oh,
yes.
The other one. The Freddy Krueger movies.
Well, the first one. They have a conversation where he talks about how they've been together for 2 years. For the first year, things were pretty hot and heavy, but since her mother died, it's been kind of more PG or edited for television. So it's made clear that Sidney has some reasonable hang-ups.
I mean, yeah, I think the girl's got a right to him.
So the other thing we learn is that the way that her room is set up, if her closet door is open, her door won't open. The door in her bedroom won't open. But you know what? I'm not doing this beat by beat, so it doesn't matter. Next day at school, she finds out about Casey and her boyfriend Steve's murder. The police interview everyone. We meet Sidney's best friend, Tatum Riley, who is played by Rose McGowan. We also meet Tatum's older brother, Dewey Riley, who is deputy. He's played by David Arquette, as kind of like lovably incompetent. He's Deputy Dewey. And we also, in addition to the friend group, includes Tatum's boyfriend, Stu, played by Matthew Lillard, and then their friend, Randy, who works and he's played by Jamie Kennedy. Their friend, Randy, Jamie Kennedy, who is movie obsessed. He works at the video store. For younger listeners, you used to have to go to a store to get movies.
To rent a movie. Yeah. You couldn't just pick it out on your phone or your TV. Yeah.
We meet all of them. And we also meet the principal, Himbry, who is played by the Fonz. Gosh, what is that guy's name?
Winkler.
Henry Winkler. Thank you. Played by Henry Winkler. So we kind of see and hear people around talking about how messed up Sidney is and how her mom was like a slut all around town. Like we hear people talking about her mother that way.
People use that
word. We also end up meeting Gail Weathers, who is the reporter for Top News, played by Courtney Cox. She is kind of a bit of an opportunist of a journalist who has written a book about the murder of Sidney's mother. But she believes that Cotton Weary is innocent and is working to try to get him off of death row, which she is doing partially to save his life, but also because it'll sell so many books.
Right.
So Sidney is going to spend the night at Tatum's house after, learning about the murders since her dad's out of town. But she is at home. She doesn't drive. And so she's taking the bus home and she's waiting for Tatum to come pick her up after practice. And the Ghostface killer comes and tries to attack her there at her house. Billy shows up as she's like freaking out and a cell phone falls out of his pocket. Now, this is 96 when not every teenager had a cell phone. It was actually relatively unusual for a teenager to have a cell phone. And so she freaks out and thinks that he's Ghostface.
Well, we don't have that name yet, but yeah, okay.
So he is arrested. At the police station, they are unable to reach her father. And again, this is before, everyone had a cell phone.
Everybody had a cell phone.
So he has not checked in at the hotel where he's supposed to be. And so when she gets to Tatum's house, there's a phone call for her. When she answers, it's the killer calling again with that voice. So since Billy is in jail, it can't be him.
Mm-hmm.
The next day at school, she is attacked again by someone in the bathroom. And so Tatum says to her, like, you go where I go where you go. And because of that attack, they close the school and they put everyone on curfew. And so after the school is closed, the principal is killed. And they all go to Stu's house. He has a party. His parents are not home because
he throws a party with a killer on the loose? What the hell?
Their thinking is safety in numbers. And then also Stu's parents aren't home. So
he wants people around him.
Yeah, but also they're like they have beer and stuff, and they're like, these are 17, 18-year-olds. Like, they shouldn't be doing this, but okay.
Yeah, okay.
So Tatum tells Stu, do not let Billy come over because Sydney will be there, and she's still feeling really uneasy around him. He had spoken to her at school and he said something like, I understand that you're upset, you have trauma about your mom, but like, my mom abandoned us and I got over it. And she's like, this is not the same thing at all. Yeah. So
what a fucker. Jesus.
So Gail Weathers shows up at the party. Deputy Dewey.
That's the Courtney Cox character.
Deputy Dewey is there as well. He's there to keep an eye on his sister and on Sydney. He goes in and like takes a look around. He lets the kids keep drinking, which is now he's supposed to be 25 and these kids are like 17 or 18. So I don't know. Anyway, Gail drops a camera in the living room so she can keep an eye on what's going on in the house. And then she goes back out to her TV van where her cameraman is. And the killings begin first. And this is also when Randy goes through the rules. Like, don't have sex because only virgins live to the end. Don't drink or do drugs because same thing as the virgin rule. Like, it's about moral purity. And never say, I'll be right back. And so Stu asks Tatum to go to the garage to get him some more beers. She goes out there. She is cornered by someone wearing the costume. She assumes it's Randy and is like, just kind of like, knock it off.
Mm-hmm.
And then he approaches with a knife. She tries to get out of the garage through a cat door, and the killer like just has the door go up, and that kills her.
Oh, a garage door, a cat door in the garage door.
Cat door in the garage. Then many of the kids leave when it actually is curfew because it's 9 p.m. But there's still like about half a dozen there when they get a phone call that the principal has been found dead, hanging from the goalposts. And so everyone leaves except for Randy. And, no one knows that Tatum is dead. At around that time, Billy comes in and Stu suggests, Sydney, why don't you go up to my parents' room so you can talk? And Billy's like, real subtle. And Sydney's like, no, it's okay, let's talk. So while they're up there, they have a conversation. She's like, I'm really sorry that I accused you. And he's like, no, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have said that about your mom and my mom, blah, blah, blah. She said, like, you can't choose the movie you're in or choose the genre of movie you're in. I wish it could be a Meg Ryan movie or maybe a good porno. And then like her suggestion being like, okay, I'm ready. So they're having sex upstairs. Randy is by himself downstairs. We don't know where Stu is. We see the killer comes in on Sydney and Billy after they're getting dressed again, and she's asking him, like, who did you call when you got the one call after getting arrested? Like, because that would be a really smart way to, like, throw me off the scent if you were the killer. And he's like, what would I have to do to prove that I'm not the killer? And then the Ghostface killer comes in and stabs Billy. She runs away. She manages to get away by going through the attic, basically falling down, like, onto a boat that's parked on the driveway, thank you. Sees Tatum, runs to the news van. Meanwhile, Dewey and Gail Weathers are, like, trying to investigate a car that's been found abandoned, and they realize it's Neil Prescott's car, Sydney's dad's. The killer comes and kills Kenny, the cameraman.
Oh, you hadn't said his name
the cameraman.
Before. Okay.
And there's Sydney is, like, trying to get away. The deputy is stabbed in the back on the porch. Gail gets into the van and discovers that her cameraman is on the roof. And then she swerves to avoid Sydney and ends up driving off the road and is knocked unconscious, might be, or possibly dead. Randy, who has been, like, knocked out by Gail because she's freaked out, finds Sydney, and she doesn't trust him. She doesn't know who to trust. Stu shows up, and so she's like, fuck you both, and locks them both outside and goes inside to call 911. And Billy comes downstairs, and she's like, oh my God, I thought you were dead. She now has, I think, the deputy's gun. I don't remember how she got it, and he's like, give me the gun. It's okay. And he unlocks the door and lets Randy,
Stu and Randy,
I think it's just Randy, in and shoots him. And that's when you discover that Billy is the killer. And then he lets Stu in the back door, and it turns out that they have been working together, which is why the killer has an alibi, because there's two of them. Find out Sydney's like, why are you doing this? And he's like, well, why do you need a motive? But then turns out it's because her mother had slept with his father, which is what led to his mother leaving. And so Stu and Billy have a plan that they're going to stab each other. So it looks like they're the only survivors. And they have her father there, and they have cloned his phone so that he will be the one who is blamed for it. Like, he'll kill, and then they're going to have him shot in the head and make it look like a suicide. And so they'll be the only survivors. But Gail had woken up. She's took the gun, and there's tussles. Things happen. Ultimately, Sydney is able to subdue, with the help of Randy and Gail, subdue both of the killers. At the end, we have those three are still standing, and actually we see Dewey being loaded onto a stretcher at the end, and Gail is giving the story at the end, still all bloodied and everything, without her original cameraman.
Randy got shot.
Just in the shoulder.
Hey, sorry to interrupt. Tracy here. Listen, Emily and I are having a party, and we would really like for you to come. It's a Zoom happy hour on Tuesday, November 18th at 7:30 Eastern, 6:30 Central. And if our charm isn't incentive enough, you should know we will be giving away presents. So get ready to pour your favorite beverage, overthink some Thanksgiving-themed pop culture, laugh, and feel a little bit smarter. You can find the link to RSVP in your show notes. Please say yes. And now, back to your regularly scheduled podcast.
Okay.
Yeah. Nobody's a good shot here.
Okay.
Except for Sydney, because at the end, they're looking over Billy, who nearly, like, he's gotten up several times, and the three of them are standing over Billy, and Randy says, in a movie, this is where the killer would come up for one final scare, and, like, his eyes open, and Sydney shoots him in the forehead, and she's like, not in my movie.
Wow. Okay.
So I was trying not to do blow by blow. It's hard.
Where do you want to start?
Let me start with, like, what this movie is known for. That's the way it names horror tropes and the way that it subverts them by naming them while at the same time using them. And what it does so well with that. Like, Kevin Williamson is just brilliant, this author.
He's the
screenwriter.
The screenwriter.
Yeah. He wrote the script, and Wes Craven turned it down several times. He wanted Wes Craven to direct, and he turned it down several times. And then finally, like, was like, no, this is really good. I'm going to do this. And there's definitely some collaboration within there, but it's a really masterful mystery, which is part of what I love about it, because I like mysteries. Like the first time I saw it, I had absolutely no idea who done it. Whereas like, and you know, I was 17, so who knows if I saw it for the first time now, if I'm such an avid consumer of mysteries, it's hard to surprise me. But even at 17, I was already an avid consumer of mysteries. And they do a lot of things to, like, they give you red herrings. So for instance, when Sydney is attacked in the bathroom at school, she's in the bathroom alone and she's like looking under the stalls because they're going in a way that she's like, am I actually hearing that or not? And then feet come down from the toilets, and they're wearing like these like really like, not Doc Martens, but like work boots, and then with jeans, and then the robe from the costume like kind of comes down. And then in the next scene, you see the chief of police smoking a cigarette, and Dewey's like, I thought you quit. He's like, I did, but he's overwhelmed. And then when he stubs out the cigarette, you see he's wearing the same kind of work boots. So like those kinds of like little misdirections, and I have no idea if that was written into the script or if that was Wes Craven or what, but just brilliant. Those are so good because they keep you off balance at every moment in terms of the mystery aspect of it. Because like prior to that, like, oh no, I don't know, what the sheriff be doing with that? But then like, why wouldn't it be? You know?
Yeah. And why did they show us the boots if not? Right.
So
even the way that you named it, like Sydney says, like, who did you call with your, like, and then so she's right. But then immediately it's countered by the killer stabbing Billy. So yeah. I hear that.
So like, it's just this is a gorgeously written story. And some of it is like Kevin Williamson. The majority of it is Kevin Williamson. And then you have Wes Craven bringing his just incredible direction to it. And then you have things like Drew Barrymore being like, kill me off in the first 10 minutes. It all keeps you off balance.
Which is kind of meta, like doing that with the actor. Because you think, especially if they advertise that Barrymore was in it, then you think that character is going to have plot armor. So to subvert that immediately, And so that is why I fell in love with horror, because it was like, I didn't really do horror. This introduced me to all of the horror tropes. The fact that I didn't know them, subverted them while also leaning into them. Even like the like in a movie, he'd wake up one last time, and he does, but he doesn't. It's also the case that, like, the way you're naming being kept off balance, it was challenging intellectually, like in the best way, in a way that if one doesn't know horror genre, one doesn't expect, right? I kind of expect to just be scared. And that's it. But so to have the scare actually be paired with this sort of intellectual challenge is titillating. For smarty pants like us.
And the fact that, so one of my favorite moments, the first time Sydney is called, she's at home alone. She'd been asleep. She wakes up, like she fell asleep after school, and she wakes up. Tatum has called saying like, hey, because Tatum was supposed to pick her up at 7:15. And she's like, hey, practice ran long. I'm on my way. And then she hangs up, and then the phone immediately rings after, and she thinks it's Tatum calling right back. And she's like, just get here. Don't worry about it. The killer is talking to her and doing the like kind of flirtatious kind of thing. He starts by saying like, I'm on your front porch right now. And so she's like, all right, I'm calling your bluff, because she like looks out and there's nobody out there. And so she goes out. That's one of the things that's truly frightening about the first 10 minutes with Drew Barrymore. When he's flirtatious, he's saying like, what's your name? And she, you still haven't told me your name. And she's like, why do you want to know my name? And he's like, well, I just want to know who I'm looking at. which freaks her out. And then he later on calls her Blondie because she's blonde. And so like, oh my God, he can see me. So she goes out onto Sydney when she's calling the bluff. She goes out on the porch. She's like, you can see me right now? I'm like, all right, what am I doing? And she sticks her finger up her nose. What am I doing? Tell me what I'm doing. And part of the reason why I love that moment so much is it feels like it's right after she says, I don't like horror movies because it's a big-breasted bubblehead who's going up the stairs when she should be going out the front door. You know, what's the point? She is like pushing back against these tropes, and that is such a funny way to do it. Like, you know, like, oh, you say you can see me? Tell me what I'm doing right now, and I'll believe you. And she does something like this, you know.
Yeah, absurd and
like not ladylike and gross and not sexy and not like, because it would be easy to be like, you know, middle finger, because that would be an easy one to guess. You know? Right. So like it's spitting in the face of the expectations of like the low expectations of teenage girls.
Yes. And also the person who's trying to menace her, literally, in this case. Like at just the surface level, it's spitting in the face of the person trying to menace her. And at the meta level, it's about, yes, I see that. That's really nice. That's really nice. So talk to me, like, while we're here with spitting in the face of people who would diminish teenage girls. You named, in your postcard, that this is a very feminist movie. Explain to me what you mean by that.
So Sydney's a badass. Sydney has very specific boundaries with her boyfriend. So when he comes to see her at the beginning and he's like, you know, we were hot and heavy and then your mom died and now we're like edited for TV. And she's like, did you come over for something specific? And he's like, no, I wouldn't dream of violating your underwear rule. So like, she's got a rule. And he says all the right things. And this gives I feel like this gives a very reasonable look at what it looks like for quote unquote nice guys to push the boundaries. In our very first episode, I talked about how in Twilight, if that's a chastity parable, it doesn't actually tell girls how to handle.
Right. When they're being pressured. Mm-hmm.
Whereas this, I feel like, does. Because it's also, it's tough and it's realistic, but she has this rule. He claims to be respecting it, and yet he keeps pushing and keeps acting like it's like it.
He says, I won't violate your underwear rule while he's sticking his hands down her underwear.
Well, not quite, but he's not literally, but he's pushing the boundaries. He's tap dancing on her boundary line. And she stops him. She says, no, stop, get out. And we know her father is in the next room, and he had heard her, like, when she was surprised when he came in the window, he'd heard her like go, ah! And so we know that she has, at this moment, she has a way out of this.
Right.
So
she can call her back up.
But as he's leaving, she says, like, look, I understand that you're frustrated, and how about a PG-13 relationship? And so she flashes him. And so it's as a 46-year-old woman watching this, it's harder to see if that is like, does she actually want that, or is that
want to?
As a 17-year-old watching it, I saw that as like, I kind of want to push my own boundaries a little bit too. She does end up sleeping with Billy. She has this lovely conversation with Tatum. Rose McGowan's Tatum is my favorite character. And I hate that she dies in this movie, and always have. Because she very gently says, is it possible that you were wrong about your mom? There have been these rumors about her having affairs. And Sydney says, like, do you believe them? And the way Tatum says, like, well, you hear that Richard Gere gerbil rumor so many times, and you start to wonder. And it's very gentle, and then and Sydney is like a little bit upset, and Tatum's like, I'm sorry I mentioned it. And they're clearly friends. And Sydney says, like, well, if that's the case, then there's a killer still at loose, and I was wrong, and blah, blah, blah. And Tatum's like, that is not on you. That's not on you to worry about. And they are later grocery shopping for the party.
Sorry, did Billy kill Sydney's mom?
Billy killed Sydney's mom.
Yuck. Sorry. Okay. They're grocery shopping for the party.
And Sydney says, well, like, I feel like Billy does have a point, because of my post-traumatic stress, like I'm like sexually anorexic. Tatum says, you are too good for Billy and his penis.
Yeah.
Like that has nothing to do with anything. And so Sydney ends up telling Billy, like, I'm afraid I'm going to turn out just like my mom. And that's part of the reason why I'm like nervous about having sex. So it is unclear to me, watching this as an adult, if Sydney's decision to sleep with Billy is really what Sydney wants. Mm-hmm. It's unclear. Mm-hmm. And I'm not going to say it doesn't matter, because it does. But what I absolutely adore about this film is that Stu and Billy try to shame her for it. Because when they're menacing her and telling her, like, they're doing the villain plan thing and all of that, this is what happened, this is what to expect, blah, blah, blah. She says, fuck you. And Billy says, no, we already played that game. And Stu says, yeah, you gave it up. That means you have to die. And that doesn't faze her at all. Mm. And it is clear that from the movie, like the movie makes it clear, she may have made a mistake in trusting Billy with that intimacy. But that does not in any way detract from who she is as a badass, as a good person, as worthy.
It's interesting that we have Randy sort of say the rules, and one of the rules is not to have sex, right? So, but all of the rules end up getting broken in this movie. So it's interesting that we actually like get it explicitly.
Yes.
And then the bad guys try to reiterate the rules, but they're not writing the rules in this movie. Sydney's writing the rules in this movie.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, she even says it, not in my movie, right? Like, so there's like this interesting sort of meta commentary that's sort of saying like, yeah, this is a horror movie, but Sydney's writing the rules.
Yes. So, and I just want to reiterate how grateful I am to Kevin Williamson and Wes Craven for giving me that framework with Sydney. Like, there is no shame whatsoever for having made that mistake. It does not detract from her in any way, shape, or form. This is not like the one false note that I had, because I so enjoyed Nightmare on Elm Street, but the one false note was the fact that Tina seemed to be like deserved to die because she had sex, which I think Wes Craven grew from. This is 12 years later. And this is making it clear, no, absolutely not. She has bodily autonomy. Sometimes that means feeling pressured or making a mistake or like even enthusiastically doing this. Maybe that is what she wanted. And she finally feels like, okay, I need to stop worrying about being my mom and just be the sexual being I want to be. It's not clear. But it doesn't matter in terms of who she is as a person. And that's phenomenal. That is phenomenal.
Yeah. So I think I just named, that this movie, that through Randy, we hear like we name the rules of horror movies and then we break them. So before we hit record, you were telling me about sort of this movie and like Roger Ebert's take on the deconstruction. Can you like do that for our listeners a little bit?
So the movie, the way that Roger Ebert describes it, and I'll include his review, his contemporaneous review in the show notes, is he's like, very rarely in movies do you have characters who go to the movies. Sometimes you'll have characters who go to the movies, but these characters know movies. And so, like, they name the tropes and they deconstruct them, and not in an academic way, but in a how to survive this way. And he described it as like this movie deconstructs itself like a self-heating can of soup.
I don't remember that as a phenomenon, but you assure me that happened.
That was a thing in the 90s. And that is part of what's going on there. This film is self-aware and winking at the audience in some ways, but also not.
It's aware of what it is, but it doesn't actually ever break the fourth wall.
No, it never breaks the fourth wall.
Which I think that's sort of what's interesting, because I love fourth wall breaking. I love it. It delights me. This is a different sort of self-awareness without actually ever breaking the fourth wall. So we are in on something and can delight in the way that Randy like knows what genre they're in, but then have Sydney completely subvert it. Like there's something like it's akin to that, but actually, it's a different realm of sort of delight at that subversion. That's not fourth wall breaking, but is sort of awareness of what genre we're in, or awareness of like even the way that final moment in the movies, he'd wake up for one final scare, and he does, but then she kills him immediately and says out loud, "Not in my movie." I want a word for that self-awareness, that like meta commentary, because it's not fourth wall breaking, but it's like adjacent.
Well, and what I find really interesting is that I feel like the movie, if you are willing to be self-aware as an audience member, is also asking you to think about what you're doing.
Yeah.
Which is why I haven't seen it in 25 years. So since Gail Weathers is judged by the movie for profiting off of murder, that kind of, for the introspective viewer, is going to get you thinking like, well, what am I doing? I'm watching it for entertainment.
Right. Not even profit.
It's not even profit, and it's not even like journalism.
Right. It's just for fun.
It's just for fun. There is something that I think is really interesting, because this came out in 96. It was right in the midst of the like violent video games, violent movies causes kids to be violent.
Right.
Even though it was before Columbine and the beginning of mass shootings in schools, which is when, like that was like when we really hammered home, like, oh, it's Marilyn Manson, it's violent video games. But we were already saying it was violent movies. Sydney, when she's confronting Stu and Billy, says says to them, because they keep referencing movies, she says to them, "You've watched too many movies." And Billy says, "Movies don't make people killers. Movies make killers more creative." There's like also that kind of pushback against that idea that like it's the film industry, it's the entertainment that is causing the violence. So that's also interesting, because it's like, okay, well, this is in some ways a safe outlet for
whatever that is. Yeah. There are two things that come up for me in terms of that, what you just said. One is, we've talked about before, and you named comedy and horror as being two sides of the same coin. The other actually is the meta commentary about Harvey Weinstein and Rose McGowan.
Yeah.
So I want to make sure we cover both. Let's do comedy and horror first, and then go.
So apparently this film, they had to fight the MPAA to get an R rating. They apparently cut
instead of like NC-17 or X.
Yeah. Apparently, like they cut quite a bit of gore already, and they kept coming back. Bob Weinstein finally got the MPAA to agree to it when they had wanted to like cut even more gore. When he told them, "Look at this as a comedy instead of a horror," and then they said, "Okay, R rating is fine." Which, whoa.
Weird. What do you think that's about? Like, unpack that for me.
Now, I think some of that has to do with the fact that there is a sense that horror needs to be moralistic in some way.
And comedy does not.
Comedy does not. If you have that kind of gore,
there has to be
and the moral of the story is,
a horror, if it's going to have that much gore, there has to be equal darkness and light for horror for the MPAA, maybe.
I think that's
so. If it's going to be gory, there has to be some sort of moralistic lesson.
Yeah.
Whereas comedy can just be comedy.
Comedy can just be, yeah.
It doesn't need to be a social commentary.
I think that is what happened. I
buy it. I'll buy it.
Now, the thing is, I have long said, I think comedy and horror are two sides of the same coin. Now, the essence of horror is tragedy. The essence of comedy is tragedy. They will talk about comedy is tragedy plus time. Even as a 17-year-old, as much as I delighted in this film, it's also tragic.
Yeah, a lot. There's a high body count.
There's a huge body count.
And the psychological trauma of Sydney, who not only lost her mother, but then it ended up being her boyfriend who did it, who then tried to, that's just trauma on top of trauma.
Yes, exactly. Now, part of the reason why I say, so that's part of why I say they're two sides of the same coin, is because they are both a way of dealing with trauma. They're a way of dealing with tragedy. The other reason is because there is a kind of laughter and that kind of scare response are both, they feel similar in the body.
There's a physiological similarity.
Yes.
I agree. There's also a way like we talk about comedy as being sort of subverting expectations. And that scare is also a even if you're expecting it, that a jump scare or whatever is a subversion of expectations.
Yes.
It's an interruption.
Yes. And so, the best horror is funny because you can't help but be funny because they're adjacent.
They're adjacent in the body.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. In the body and in the sort of platonic ideal.
Mm-hmm. Yes. This film leaned into it. It leaned into the humor. And some of that has to do with the screenwriting. Some of it has to do with the actors. So Matthew Lillard in particular is...
That's Randy?
No, he's Stu. His delivery is this kind of manic. Even watching it this time, where I had a very hard time watching it, there is a line that made me laugh so hard, even though it is awful. So after Sydney has confronted them, she calls using her father's phone and the
voice modulator.
It's Stu on the phone and he's bleeding and not doing well, and she says to him so we know Billy's doing this because he's a mama's boy. What's your reason when you don't have a motive? He goes, peer pressure. I'm just too sensitive. And it's so funny even in this horrific moment.
Yeah.
And I'd forgotten about that, and I laughed. And I remember really liking his performance as a kid.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Even though it's the kind of charming blowhard.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
He's that kind of manic, charming blowhard. And that actually, I do want to get a little bit into, this film is a little bit prescient about inceldom. Because that's not exactly what's going on with Billy and Stu. But we find out at one point that Stu had dated Casey, Drew Barrymore's character, and that she dumped him for her boyfriend. And so there's a motive there for that first killing.
For that very first murder. There's also, even if it's not sort of about involuntary celibacy, there is sort of a just deep control of women's sexuality, not just Sydney's, but her mother's.
Yes. And entitlement.
I mean, even naming the rating, why are you entitled to an X-rated film with your girlfriend? That's not a thing that you just get.
Yeah. Yeah.
There are two people here and
yeah.
Yeah.
I found Billy, I wish I could watch this for the first time as an adult just to see. I found him greasy and awful.
Yeah, just your description is reprehensible. I have seen nothing endearing about him whatsoever.
And I cannot remember
If you found him charming.
I just can't remember. I can't remember how I saw him the first time I saw it. And since then, every time I've seen it, I know he's the killer. So like, I don't know.
Right.
So it's very hard to say. I do want to, like we mentioned, like just the meta commentary of Harvey Weinstein and Rose McGowan.
Like it's known that he raped her.
Oh God,
right?
yes. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
And then ruined her career.
Because she
wouldn't shut up about it.
Yeah.
Quote unquote.
Yeah. Right.
Which is what he wanted her to do.
Mm-hmm.
And I see that there's some a weird parallel, I feel like, in what happens to her character, in that it is made relatively clear that she and Stu are sexually active. It's not explicit. We don't know for sure. But the way that she talks to Sydney, the way that she dresses, the way that she acts, the way that she and Stu act together, it seems reasonably clear. She's also outspoken, strong. She takes no shit from anyone.
And she's killed trying to escape. Mm-hmm.
She is alone in the garage because Stu says to her, hey, can you get me more beer from the garage? And she actually says, like, what am I, the beer wench? And instead of like, and that's one of the things that I actually, this time I was like, instead of being like, no, get it yourself, which is what today Rose McGowan would say, what today me would say, 17-year-old Tatum Riley and 20-something Rose McGowan wanting to get along, be like, okay, yeah, okay. Like, what am I, the beer wench? But all right, because she is a badass, but she wants to have a career. And so that puts her in a place to be vulnerable and then punished for being outspoken, for taking shit from no one.
Mm-hmm.
And that's horrifying.
Yeah.
And I don't know where to put that. Like, is this commentary on that? Like, obviously, I'm certain Kevin Williamson had no idea of that. And like,
no, it's not. It's just one of the ways that art imitates life and life imitates art, I think, rather than being like an intentional commentary. Yeah. Yeah.
I have always been saddened by the fact that this like badass character who I love, who drives a Volkswagen Beetle, by the way. And do you want to tell the listeners why that's important to me?
Just listeners, Emily saved up and bought herself a Volkswagen Beetle when she was 16. So
or 17.
This was 17. Yeah. She saved up and bought it with her own money. It was a very big deal. It was a very big accomplishment.
At the time that I went to see this, I would have driven my yellow Volkswagen 1972 Volkswagen Super Beetle to the theater to see this movie.
Yeah. So we are at time. There's so much here, so I'm not surprised. But I want to is there anything that we didn't name that you want to make sure that you say before I try to see if I can reflect back some highlights at you?
I wish the film franchise hadn't continued as long as it did. I haven't seen past Scream 3 or 4, again, because of that experience in around 2000, 2001. I have no idea where it's gone. I know they continued to have meta commentary. I remember when I saw whatever the one I saw was, I think it was 4, I was thinking actually it would be fitting and kind of interesting if Sydney were now Ghostface, even though I don't want that for her as a character, but just if you're going to continue with the trope subverting and the meta commentary, that would be interesting. But it's like what happens with long running sitcoms. You end up pushing the characters to the point where they're caricatures.
Yeah. You move that window of what's acceptable. It just keeps moving until it's totally absurd. Yeah.
Listeners, if you have continued to watch this franchise,
the Scream franchise,
you might be able to tell me if it's...
Yeah. Let us know, please.
Yeah.
Find us on socials. We're on Instagram and Facebook. We'll put links, make sure the links are in the show notes to our socials. All right. So just in time for Halloween, we are talking about this original Scream movie, which my sister has complicated feelings about because it is the film that made her fall in love with horror. But also then she was horrified several years later when a peer was murdered in college and she realized that she was being entertained by murder. There's a lot, it's kind of ripe, whatever. It's complicated. So this movie, like, one of the things that's really cool about this movie is the way in which it winks at the audience, not through fourth wall breaking, but through something that is adjacent, whereby the characters kind of know what genre movie they're in. They say out loud what the rules of the genre are, and then they break those rules. And there's something really delightful about that. There's also like a constant like misdirection and sort of subversion of expectations beyond the scare that keeps the intellectual viewer on their toes and is like a good kind of challenge, which for smarty pants like us is titillating in the best way. So that included like killing off the like big name actor character in the first 10 minutes with Drew Barrymore. It also included like misdirection with the sheriff's boots and other things. So that even as an avid consumer of mysteries, Emily didn't know who done it the first time that she watched it. And I heard several times you sort of saying like, now I wonder if I watched it for the first time now about various things, not just the mystery, but also sort of the way that you kind of perceive some of the characters. Notably, this very feminist character of Sydney. She's a badass. She's tough. She like subverts expectations, like in the moment where she's like, I'm calling your bluff, and sticks her finger up her nose rather than giving the middle finger, which would have been kind of expected. She's so unexpected in like really like spitting in your face kind of ways, not only of the person who's menacing her, but of the society that would shit on teenage girls. And that's really like a beautiful thing. You expressed actual gratitude to Kevin Williamson, the screenwriter, and to Wes Craven, the director. And I would expect like also the Neve Campbell, the actress who embodied this character, for this character of Sydney, her framework for sex, her relationship with sex, right? She has boundaries, which she defends. Ultimately, she does have sex. It's a mistake. The man did not deserve her trust, but she is not punished for it. At least not with her life. The movie does not sort of make a moral judgment of Sydney for having had sex. And there's something that you're grateful about that.
I also just want to say, like Nancy Thompson, she is vulnerable, but that doesn't take away from her strength.
Right. Nancy Thompson being the last girl standing from the original Freddy Krueger movie, which is called Nightmare on Elm Street, and I always forget. So some of the ways that it like talks about the tropes and then subverts them, Roger Ebert said, like, this is deconstruction, but not in an intellectual way. It's like in a very practical way, like the self-heating soup can, which who knew that was a thing in the 90s? I guess Roger Ebert did. I still don't really get the metaphor, but that's okay. I'm going to leave it. So we talked a lot about comedy and horror, and we talked about it in the abstract and the ways in which comedy and horror occupy similar spaces, both physiologically in the human body, but also like in the intellectual / psychological space, emotional space of comedy is tragedy plus time. Horror is tragedy immediate. And so the ways in which those two things travel together, I find it really fascinating that the producers were able to get the rating that they want when they invited the ratings board to look at it as comedy rather than a horror. Like tragedy in the immediate, apparently our society believes needs to have some sort of lesson, but comedy does not, which I also find really, really fascinating. I think we could probably do a whole show about that. We spent a little bit of time talking about the way that life imitates art with Rose McGowan's character, who is a total badass. She's outspoken. She takes no guff. And she has sex with the wrong dude. And Rose McGowan, the actress who had non-consensual sex with the wrong dude. And both the character and the actress were attacked trying to escape. So there's something really poignant and just heartbreaking about that. And that you saw that heartbreak as a 17-year-old without knowing the story of the actress and the producer who preyed upon her. I think that's everything that we talked about. What did I forget?
I think just the tidiness of the film in terms of like tidy writing, like which always delights me.
Always appeals to you.
Yeah. But one of the things, and I didn't mention this earlier, but one of the things, the reason why they ended up killing off the principal was because they realized that there was like 30 minutes of the movie where nobody died. He wasn't originally supposed to, but they realized like, oh, they killed him off. And then that gave an excuse for the remainder of the party to leave because they went to go. And so like that kind of thing just delights me, with that kind of like behind the scenes into storytelling, because it gets to human nature, because it's horrifying that the kids are like, oh, let's go see him before they cut him down. But at the same time, yeah, it sounds about right. And it also makes the final confrontation, like it makes it make sense rather than just like, all right, well, better get going. Which is the only other reason why like six kids would be leaving.
Right.
So that's just, it's phenomenal. It's amazing. And I love hearing those stories about how a story comes to be.
Cool. All right. Next week, Em, I am going to bring you my deep thoughts about the Steve Martin film, The Jerk.
I was born a poor black child.
Exactly. Exactly. And we are going to talk about that.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Well, I'll see you then.
This show is a labor of love, but that doesn't make it free to produce. If you enjoy it even half as much as we do, please consider helping to keep us overthinking. You can support us at our Patreon. There's a link in the show notes. Or leave a positive review so others can find us. And of course, share the show with your people. Thanks for listening. Our theme music is Professor Umlaut by Kevin MacLeod from Incompetech.com. Find full music credits in the show notes.
Thank you to Resonate Recordings for editing today's episode.
Until next time, remember, pop culture is still culture. And shouldn't you know what's in your head?